If you're interested in having sessions or certification training, go to pastlifeawakeninginstitute.com for details. Thanks for watching and enjoy this episode. Welcome back, Karin.
Hello.
Yeah, this is Karin Munster-Peters. She's a psychologist, life coach, and energy healer. She specializes in giftedness, child development, parenting, and highly sensitive people. You can find her at thevibrantsensitive.com and on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. This is our second podcast together. On our first podcast, we covered Karin's professional development and work life. And this podcast will focus on the personal development and personal life. So that we'll see the healer's journey and spiritual awakenings on the way in this life and in past lives, and the practices of self-care and self-development to be an advanced professional healer in the now. So we'll look at questions like, does a healer need to be healed to practice healing? Comes up with me and the students and people I work with a lot. Self-esteem is a big one, and the self as developed by childhood and cultural conditioning, and congruence and self-care in walking the talk. So that's all coming up. So you've got a really interesting origin story in terms of your own childhood. So can you tell us a little bit about where you were born and how you're raised in your formative years?
Yes. So I was born in the Dominican Republic. My father was Dutch and my mother was Dominican. My father was a geologist. So he was an original gold digger. He was really searching for gold. He did. He found it in the Dominican Republic. Not for us, unfortunately, for an American company. But he did. And in that same village where he found gold, he met my mom. He had already 2 children with another Dominican woman before he met my mother, and yeah, it's interesting to me. Just being Dominican, it's just when I think a couple of years ago, I went back a lot more to my roots. So, and actually exploring like what it meant to me to be Dominican and what it is that being Dominican is. But I grew up there, in a very big household, as Dominican households are. You're never alone. There's always an auntie, a cousin, an extra it's always like an in and out of people coming into your home, into the home, and they'll live with you for a certain amount and they'll move on, and then somebody else will come. There's always help in the household by someone. So that aspect was very much present. That you had like that village. You went out of your house, and we weren't in a village. We were in a city. We were in Santo Domingo. But even there, you were still being raised by everyone. You went outside and it was the neighbor. You went out there and it was, there was always people. So you grew up very, very independent. And I think that was something that really, really formed me. But the fact that there was always more people around to be an attachment figure it's so vital. That it's not just that one person that we here in the Western culture, we know there's all that pressure there, like that's the one person, you better get it right. So it's like in a culture like Dominican Republic, people are allowed to be more flawed. So in their flawness, like, okay, so the help comes in to help with that, and we don't have that. Like, I have 3 children now, and throughout 23 years of parenting, I miss my village. Like, oh man, it's all on me. And that was really one of the most important aspects for me as growing up there. Like that village. Of course, it's a very Dominican Republic. It's a Catholic voodoo country, which means they believe in God. You better be going to church, but that chicken right there might be the devil. So every aspect of like that, like they're always believing that that devil, it's everywhere. It can be everywhere. You can be the devil right now. Who says I'm the real Karin? You know? And that aspect was extremely scary to me as a child growing up. And but it really forms the whole culture.
Yeah.
It's that fear of God and at the same time faith in God. And then there's this dark aspect that is like always in the undercurrent.
Yeah, I've got a question on that. Before I
Yeah,
ask that, I'm
yeah,
curious. So you were born to Dominican and Dutch parents,
yeah,
but you were
yeah.
raised in the Dominican Republic the first 12 years. So firstly, was there an issue? Did you feel half Dominican and half European? Or because you were
So
born
I
up there?
didn't.
Okay.
So I didn't. So this is so interesting to me, with because especially like when with how do you say, like conditioning. When I went, I left to the Dominican Republic when I was 12. So it's skipping a few years, but I'll get to my point.
Yeah.
And the first time, it was the first time I realized that I was half, that I was mixed,
Right.
right? I
Well,
never realized that. It was never an issue. It was never a thing.
well, that's actually quite nice. I thought they might have made an issue about it in the Dominican Republic not being accepted, but you completely were.
No, there is, of course, there's this inverted racism going in the Dominican Republic. The white people are good, are better, are clean.
Right.
uh, so I might look really dark now, but I was actually a really blonde child. I was a very blonde, very white child. And I have very blonde daughters. To prove it, like everybody's like, how can they be yours? Like, look at my pictures, they're mine.
Yeah.
That was blonde too. And I had like that straight hair, and like you couldn't even put a little. It was just so they would. It's not so much as that they will be. There's no racism as saying like you're different, but I was very much loved. Like, oh, La Rubia, which is the blonde one. They called me La Rubia. Me, yes, they did.
Yeah.
So, right, La Rubia. And then in that aspect, I was never, but there were many mixed children. So that's the thing. The Dominican Republic is so mixed. It's so, my very, very dark cousin have a blonde child with blue eyes, right? Like it just popped out, right? It's just because it's that culture, all that history comes together in these colonial countries, right?
Yeah.
So you never know like what color is gonna pop out. It just don't. It could
Yeah.
be like so that in that aspect, it was like, oh, she's whiter, so it's a good thing. But it was never like that made me mixed, or that made my mother less.
Right.
So that was what was so weird about when I got to the Canada, and they were, oh, so you're mixed. Like it wasn't a label. There was no label around that. You're mixed. No, you're you're just, like all of us, we're all mixed.
Okay. Yeah.
So to go to a country where all of a sudden that's like, and I had to kind of like recognize myself as I'm also part black. I just didn't, that it still doesn't resonate in my body. With a lot of issues going, like, and all the things in America and other things, like, look, that's your history. That's not my history. My history doesn't say that to me. My history doesn't make me less. That your history probably did that to you, but you're asking me to own something that is not mine.
Yeah.
I never felt less.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
it's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so actually we'll come to like the cultural clash or like the switching of cultures and then recognizing the cultural conditioning by contrast. But before we
Mm,
do that, I'm curious to know, So we've established then you're essentially, a purely Dominican child in childhood raised by the village. But you also
Yeah.
mentioned the dark undercurrents. There's God in Christianity, but there's also the voodoo, which is, the devil and Satan, and watch out. And so you've actually got an interesting bio on your website, and you say Dominican children are pretty much raised by the devil. He is
Yeah.
everywhere, and he come and get you. Spanking,
Yeah.
shaming is how parents get respect. And then you said that resulted in deeply rooted fears and extreme nightmares. Even said, I've never slept through the night since.
I still haven't.
That's a
And
huge
again,
statement.
I've done a lot of things, a lot of work. I still don't sleep. When people say to me, when people say like, oh my God, I had such a bad night. I woke up twice. I'm like, that would be like a fantastic night for me. Like just to wake up. I wake up every hour or more. So no, it's a real thing. And of course I go back a lot to Dominican Republic. I lived there 2 years in 2018, 2020. And just to see how that same things it's still there. Like they're trying to become more aware, like we shouldn't be spanking so much, but they really still believe it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Like we're teaching them respect. We're teaching them that they cannot show up in society like this. And I've had many conversations, especially with family members. And then when I hear my cousin, to her children saying, el cuco está aquí, el cuco te viene a buscar. The cuco is the boogeyman, right? Like he's gonna come and get you. And I'm like, like it crushes me because like they not everyone is as sensitive. Not everyone reacts the same way. But I literally did not sleep with my lights off for years. I had to sleep with my little brother. If he wasn't allowed to sleep with me, I would sneak into his bedroom. I wouldn't still like, and I'm doing so well. That are certain things that will kind of like still get me there, that I'm lying in bed and and like, what's in here? What's here, right?
Yeah. Well, I
And
think it's quite useful to hear this because a lot of people might think, well, it's not, you've got a master's degree in psychology or Dutch, and life was easy for you, but I have a tough childhood. I've got some ongoing issues I'm dealing with, so I can't be here like you are. But what this is telling us is that you had a tough childhood in some ways, and that there are ongoing issues, but that doesn't stop you from doing all the work that you're doing.
no, well, and it drove me really, like seriously. I think the first 20 years of my life, I was in despair. I was in a constant despair, asking like whatever was up there under the shower, screeching, why me? Right? Like, why do I see all these people kind of like going along lives? Like, there's just so neutral. And I seem to have like this accelerated, complete everything on top of me, one on top of the other, one, and I just couldn't grasp like, why do I need so much pain all the time? I mean, my mom and I we're not. My mom had a brain hemorrhage a couple of years ago, 6 years ago, and she's not doing well physically. But she's pretty okay mentally. She's pretty there, and we've done a lot of work on it. We've done a lot of things have been spoken, truths have been said.
Okay.
But she and I have had a very conflicted relationship all throughout all the years. I mean, she would just go into rage, and then I mean, if I dropped the plastic bag that just broke because it was too heavy, I would get slapped. I mean, I would get, it wasn't just, I'm not talking about a little spanking. I mean, she would physically get twigs that are especially can produce blood when they're made wet so that you would bleed. Um, and we had, and that was really, really tough because I was getting, stronger and stronger and bigger, and she's Dominican and I'm not, and I'm out. So I got like a few centimeters on her.
Yeah.
And I went into that space within myself where I was like, like, you can't reach me anymore. You've hit me so often. You cannot hurt me anymore. Bring it on. And that would enrage her more. So there was like all these aspects that I would be like, when I went to Canada, to be brutally honest, it wasn't because like I would have loved to go anywhere. I was always very much reading about the States and high school. I wanted to go there, right? But it was to get me away from my mom. It was my dad saying, if you don't go now, one of you are going to end up killing each other. And that was the reality of it, that we were just so completely not the same type of people. That she had no clue what my world was. I had no clue what her world was. And as I've grown older, I have understood it more and more. Her conditioning did this to her. And she was trying to keep me safe. Like, I get that now, but a child doesn't understand that.
Yeah.
Like, why, if I'm falling, why am I being beaten on my wound? And in her conditioning, if I have a wound, I'm not pretty, so I will never find a husband, so I will not be safe. Right?
Yeah.
But it took me years and years of work to get to that place of not only understanding the culture, but forgiving that within her and within myself for all the thoughts that I've had around that.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. From your life story, I know you left the Dominican Republic when you were about 12.
Yeah.
You had a
Mm-hmm.
couple of years in Canada, and then you
Yeah.
moved to the Netherlands. And your
Yeah.
mother, you were separated from your mother in Canada for the most part, and then your mother initially tried to go to the Netherlands, but found out she wasn't happy and moved back to the Dominican Republic. So that's indicative, like she has her Dominican cultural conditioning, and she could not, would not, did not adapt to life in Europe. And went back to the Dominican Republic, and she stays there now, does she?
Yes.
And so, but you were really, a mixed European Dominican parentage, but really a real Dominican upbringing. But when you went to Europe, you did adapt, and so now, and you've also would have then changed. Your mother was conditioned by her grandmother and did what her grandmother did. You are not doing what your mother did.
No.
Different style, right?
It's completely different.
So how did you adapt to Europe? What was it like for you? So your
Well,
mother was there and didn't like it, but you did adapt, and you then spent 26 years in the Netherlands, and in a lot of ways, did you feel Dutch?
I did feel Dutch especially I think the first 10 years I felt really Dutch. A lot of the Dominican culture, it's not me. I don't straighten my hair. I'm not covered in makeup. I'm not fixated about the outside world. I'm very much about the inside world.
Yeah.
And when I think the first time I went back after I left, I had that moment when I was 16 years old, and I went to visit my old friends, and they were all with the polished nails and the perfectly eyebrows and all the hair, and I was like, "Get out of here!" I was like, "Oh my God, that's just so not me." And I really liked the Dutch back then, not anymore.
Okay.
The Dutch system of equality, a little bit more like there's not that big poverty and rich divide.
Yeah.
And that was really painful to me. I was always a very sensitive child. I mean, my dad would give me 5 pesos to go get candy at the corner store. By the time I got to the corner store, the money was gone because I would give it to homeless people, right? I wouldn't get there.
Okay.
I was always that kid, so I was always in a lot of pain for people who didn't have it, who didn't have what we had, and we weren't rich in the Dominican Republic. We were pretty middle class. I mean, I went to really good school, but I went there on scholarship. So for me to, and I was always in that divide in that school. I was with the extreme Dominican elite in school, like with kids that were like flying out everywhere. They had their yachts, they had their everything, and we go. We had a little middle class family home, and we were much richer than, of course, my Dominican family, but we never had that excess of my peers. So I was always navigating in this world of abundance, of extreme abundance and poverty. I would go in the weekends to my family and we would sleep 10 in one bed and the leaking like sink roof. And then, on the weekend later, I would be at a villa, at a mansion in Casa de Campo, which is where all the rich go. So I was always navigating these things. And I think that made me, I don't know, I think with all these, am I Dutch? Am I Dominican? I felt more Dutch for a long time until I realized that the Dutch culture also caps off growth.
It cuts off
It
growth.
caps off. The Dutch don't like people to excel.
Right.
It's everyone has to just be normal.
Yeah.
Why are you not normal? Why aren't you happy yet?
Yeah.
Why aren't you happy yet? And Dominicans have that big cheerleading aspect of them. Like, we're just going to go conquer the world, one little side business at a time. No, they don't believe that you can't make it. And the Dutch are like, are you sure? Are you sure? You're going to start your own practice right out of university? Who do you think you are? Oh my God. And my Dominican family will be like, oh my God, of course you're going to do that. Wow, yes, you do that. You go for it. And the Dutch are like, are you sure? Shouldn't you be like, working for a boss first and, gaining experience? No. You're putting yourself at risk. Oh my God. And then that's when you realize, okay, I was in two different worlds. Because that's when I realized I just go for it. I don't care. I go for it.
Yeah. So how about, so that's kind of an awakening to, I don't have to be like the very conformist, everybody's the same. But then what about the initial awakening from, I've had this culture beaten into me by my mom, and this is how to be Dominican and watch out for the devil and God and everything. And then you awakened out and, have the makeup and everything. And then you awoke out of that. So what was it like the first time of just sort of realizing all this stuff being told for the first 12, 14 years doesn't really add up in this second culture?
I think I never did the makeup thing.
Right,
I think that was one of the
for example,
main things.
So your friends in the Netherlands have got no makeup, but then you tell them, oh, if you do this, the devil will get you, and they go, "What are you talking about?"
Well, no, because I never talked about it in that way, because I think
but what about even your inner dialogue? How do you talk about it to yourself?
I didn't. I didn't. I never talked. I think I repressed that so long.
Okay.
About the devil aspect. I just like try to get through it. There were always signs that it was there. Like, I could not even look at a Bible. If somebody even tried to talk to me about the Bible or read to me a Bible verse, I would seriously just go into an anxiety attack.
Okay.
It just like the Bible, what other people would see as a sign of love or whatever, for me was just evil. It was just so scary. I couldn't even touch it.
Okay.
So I think it wasn't a conscious thing. I think it drove me more. It was there in my subconscious all the time on the sleep.
Right.
Because that's how it showed up. Like, in my normal life, it wasn't present because I just moved on and I left that country, and I was in a country when it wasn't spoken of. But it was there in my sleep.
Right.
I was always afraid of the dark. I was always afraid of sleeping. And that's the thing. It's always in the sleep, because in my normal life, I'm the person that goes in, I don't care where, I'm alone at night at 3 a.m. and it doesn't do anything for me. Like, in my wake state, I'm fearless.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it's the sleep, it's the unknown of what is there.
Well, yeah, that's like, so you've got hypnosis training. Hypnosis is the
Mm,
foundation of my work. So to me, that's the kind of thing. Why'd you get so interested in the subconscious? Therefore, hypnotherapy, therefore the superconscious and memories and things in the past and past conditioning, this life and
yeah,
past life. That's why, I think everyone who gets into this field has to deeply connect with the concept of the subconscious becomes very
yeah,
real and experiential. So that's part of what happens with you. And so, so then you were woken from even the Dutch system. We talked last time about the educational system with some limitations, and you're
yeah,
saying now they're a little bit, just sort of stay in the herd, don't
yeah.
jump, don't be a tall poppy or do things your own way. But
No,
now, just
no,
recently, in the last couple of years, you've moved to Portugal, and so
yeah.
what? And so still in Europe, but you're now out of a city. You're in like a farmy kind of area, rural area, something like that, isn't it? So tell us
Yeah.
about that move and that transition and what
So
was behind that.
that's interesting because of course we're continually like why are we doing so well here? We went back to the Dominican Republic for 2 years, and I wanted to know myself within that space again. I wanted to go to the Dominican Republic to see who am I, right?
Yeah.
Exactly that. Who am I as a Dominican woman? And I wanted to know myself there as an adult, not just on holidays, but as an adult. Who am I there? I realized it's not my thing. Again, I'm just not very Dominican in the sense that I just the things that matter to them, I don't give a
Yeah.
and that makes it really, I'm always kind of like I have to feel like that I had to be in that space of saying, oh, I'm not interested. No, I do not want to go to the bar at 3 a.m. No, I don't, like Dominican women are very partying all their life. You will see grannies at 70 still partying.
Okay.
Uh, I don't have that in my body. Never
Yeah.
had. Maybe 1 year as a teenager. That's it. I like my bed, even though
Yeah.
I don't sleep much. I do
Yeah.
like it.
Okay.
So we went back. So we decided to go to Portugal, and because we didn't want to go back to the Netherlands, we thought, no, that's just like totally not it. And we didn't want to. We couldn't. We didn't want to stay in the Dominican Republic, and we landed here. It was total coincidence. So it wasn't. My husband had been digging like, let's go to Portugal for a while. And I was like, no, no, I don't want to learn another language. I already have so many languages in my head.
Yeah.
Oh my God, one more. So I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, because of everything that is the pandemic and things like that, I said, okay, look, let's do it. Let's try it. And we've really loved it here. I think we're in between now, like really literally like that. It's not Dominican Republic, but it's not Europe either.
Okay.
it's it's pretty in the Portuguese are very humble people. They're so humble. It's just like sometimes, like I have to like beg them to take my money, like it's here all the alternative practices are too cheap. Like seriously, they don't understand the value of what they're bringing to the table,
Right.
and because they're just so happy to be doing, and it's the whole culture. They're so humble. They're very, the country's just so it has such a slower pace. Dominica's very
Right.
you say, I need somebody to create a business for birthday parties for 10-year-old girls. There'll be 20 Dominicans in a row with a full business plan for you to present within an hour. If you say that to a Dominican, they go to a Portuguese, they go, uh-huh. They're fine. They're like, they're in no rush to do. They don't have that thing. Dominicans are so very, very, and I'm very much in between. Like I'm in my outside world. I can be very high, but I need to be able to just go down.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that opportunity in the Dominican Republic. I couldn't get out of it. And here it's just like it's the completely different vibration. The land, the hills, it's just
Yeah, I think a lot of what you're talking about touches on like really knowing who you are,
yeah,
but discovering who you are and also being clear about what you're not. And I think all these are qualities that are really helpful of like, and so this is all your personal life and your personal things, but I think it really helps that when you act as a professional, as a healer, having this self-value. So you talk about they don't quite understand the value that they have, but you understand you've got self-esteem. You've also got
yeah,
authority. If you want to go out and do this and that, I'm not going to do it. And this is what I
yeah,
do. This is what I don't do. And I think that's really important for therapists and student therapists to understand, because a lot of people they treat their client as they want to be their friend. They're needy for their client's approval. They get caught. They get hypnotized by the suggestions of their client. Oh, I want to do this and that, and then they go along with it. They get dragged into their client's drama, and instead, we really need to be a leader and have them have a highest perspective and lead people out of it. So you've been a leader in your life. You just didn't toe the line and stay in Dominican Republic. And for 12 years, I'm Dominican. I'm not even, Dutch. But then you didn't also toe the line in the other culture, that sort of, the flip side. And you've really found the third way, which is that, your own path, which is not determined by your cultural conditioning. And I think that quality is what healers really need to have. You don't have to leave your country or whatever, but you have to have that kind of a mindset. So does that make sense? What do you think?
that makes a lot of sense. And it's one of the things that I talk about this a lot with my clients. Because the thing is that for me, it doesn't feel like a choice to be me.
Yeah.
Like there's if I'm not me, I'm not well. I really am not well. It's like again, it's that soul tearing moment when you feel completely out of alignment with who you are and your values.
Yeah.
And if and it's that compass energy that is always saying to me, you're not on track. Even if it feels really uncomfortable, and if you have to speak a truth that is not pretty about what you need, you must speak it, because the other side of that is pain.
Yeah.
It's depression, it's burnout. So we have to make sure as healers that we're so boundaried. I'm a very intelligent person and I'm so qualified in many things. That doesn't mean I have to do them all.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, you can do that." And like, it's true, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
And you can do that. True. That doesn't move my soul. That doesn't get me started. So it's so, when I see a lot of people, a lot of therapists starting out, and they're so wide in their and what they're doing, that it's like, what do you really do? And they don't even know themselves what they're doing, because they're just their scope is so wide. And they are just taking everything because, oh, it's making me money, but is it making you happy?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Are
think,
you actually crafting your thing by doing it?
yeah.
you know and that is, I think, the most important thing we need to, as healers, we have to understand. Look, we have probably we can do 500 things, but you don't have to.
Yeah. So actually, I want to come back to that, but before we do, just even like the idea of like healing the healer. So that's one
Mm,
thing people said before we even get to that. So I think that the big point there is like people have to know their own voice. So this
yeah.
comes with a lot of artists. They really, until you have a really, you have to really present an authentic version of you instead of the person who really inspired you to do what you do, and then you sort of just do an impression of them. And I
Oh,
think a lot of artists do that. Comedians will, whoever their favorite comedian is, for the first 2 years, they'll sort of be doing an impression of it. And
mm,
therapists can do it as well,
yeah.
and or they pick up a lot of different trainings. And then, like, I could do this or that. But if you're trained in 9 modalities and you try to do all of them in the same session, it's a mess. So you've got to really know what you are and do that. And a lot of times less is more. And so being congruent, but a part of that as well is that point where it comes out of that own pain. So people might feel that, if I'm having these pains and issues and discomforts, then how am I going to heal other people? But a lot of what you're saying is that is the kind of thing that keeps you honest and forces you to know who you are because it's your pain. And so all those other people, those other unique voices came out of their own background. And so honestly, and a lot of people, just honestly dealing with it is important. And knowing that there's an ongoing process where it's not incongruent to have your own stuff you're working on while you're helping other people with theirs.
I think the biggest misconception there is out there is that we have to have it all figured out, because I would say when we're done, we're dead. And we're not, then we'll come back again for the rest,
Yep.
So I don't believe we are ever done. I think we're always just deepening our own processes and our own understanding of ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole, and I even say to my clients, healing is not a result. It's the process of awakening and awareness into the self. Because, and then again, should I be feeling a fraud that I haven't healed all my fibromyalgia pain? You know what? Sometimes I do, and sometimes, but I realize it makes me such a better healer because I know the processes that are necessary to go deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper. It's that rabbit hole that we're going into. And every bit of relief that we get from that, every moment of awakening, of understanding, of even an insight, just releases something in the body. It does. And will I ever be done? I don't think so. Probably that's my belief, and that's why I'm never done. But I do believe that it makes me a more relatable healer, a more authentic healer. I take my clients on all my journeys. They know my pain. They know my struggles. And that's why they stand up for me, because they know that they don't have to be perfect.
Yeah. I think there's something to having a hard, honest look at yourself and even the humbleness that you resonate with in Portugal. And the willingness to be uncomfortable and honestly look at the things that are causing you really pain and that do need to be dealt with. Because I'll tell you, as a teacher and as a therapist, the most damaging, dangerous thing you will ever see is a healer who thinks that they're healed, believes that they're healed, gives themselves positive self-talk that they're healed and are not healed. I've had people I've had people argue with me about there seems that they're having an emotional abreaction. Their pain is coming up and destroying the interaction, which is and they will then say, but you don't understand. I've been working on this for 20 years and I've figured it out. No, you haven't. You're absolutely lying to me. Do not lie. You've got to, and the reason they're lying is because there's a complete lack of self-awareness and a complete lack of humility. These are the people that have the self-esteem, but they're like, £1,000 for a session because what I do is so valuable. These people who overcharge. And so that culture is so poisonous, but but really those people suffer so much, but they're the ones that will put them on themselves on a pedestal. And it's so damaging to themselves and anyone that would choose to work with them. But they do get sucked into it because a lot of those people are very good at marketing. So I pulled down the mask of this particular person that I thought of. She's a great marketer. She makes a ton of money, but she's full of, and that's the honest truth. And she needs, a lot of people, we build up their self-esteem, but she needs to bring a lot of this stuff down. But it's uncomfortable to do so. And she didn't want to, and she's spent that life, shielding herself from that truth and just the poverty in that. You talk about she's one of the richest healers I know, but she's by far the poorest. And it's sad to see. And that plays out at various levels. Yeah. Do you? You see that a lot?
I see that all the time. Yeah, I see that all the time. And that's where you know, one of the most, I think one of the most valuable tools we can have as human beings are just be in observation mode for a while. Just observe, what are you seeing? You don't have to engage with everything. You just observe what's happening here. And when I first started in the online world, because I did my physical practice since 2005, um, and I went online a little 2013, 14, 15, right? And I bought into so much bullshit. Just the good marketing pages, right? And they're like, oh my God, they have some. And then they end up hiring me to help them. And then you're like, oh my God, they're all full of crap. And that taught me so much because I realized it. So I did that for a long time. I was working with a lot of people who were online and they were marketing themselves as so big and they're asking for so much money. And then they come to me and I'm like, oh my God, we're a little baby. So like we all need just some cuddling. Yet they will never come out to the outside world with it. So I'm not free, to, so of course, to call them on them either, with from your integrity and from your code of ethics. Yet it taught me not just to. I like a lot of sometimes it's like, am I cynic now? Am I being cynic? I don't think I'm being cynic. I think I'm just being real, and that a lot of therapists that are starting out in this online world, and even on a physical level, just physical practices, etc. Just be so careful with what people are selling because most of them just have a template that they're recreating over and over again. And I'm telling you, I've spent all the money on the templates that I've seen coming by 500 times. And just and I just stopped. I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I said, you know what? If they need me, they will find me. I just could not do it anymore. I was like, I cannot keep marketing myself in ways that are just not authentic to me. I cannot be talking about things that are just not authentic to me. And everybody that is telling you otherwise, like give them to me for an hour and then we'll see what they're really selling.
Right.
that I know that, and I've had also people like you said that said that. I remember once upon a time somebody tagged me on a trauma course, uh, and they tagged me like, Karin, is it interesting for you? And I'm always humble and I'm always willing to learn more, right? I want to learn as much as I can that I can help my clients.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, and she tagged two people, two healers, me and another healer. And I go, wow, thank you so much. I'm always willing to learn. And I did sign up for it. The other person goes, oh, thank you, but I've healed all my trauma and
Right.
extensive training. And this person then joins my group and then messages me crying every 2 days about things that she's experiencing. And I'm like, really? What did you exactly?
Exactly. Well, that's the big difference. I just want to make that clear. It's okay for healers who are big deal healers to behind the scenes come and have sessions with me and have trainings with me. That's fine. I don't expect anyone to, even if they look like a big deal on the outside. But here's the thing. The real problem is, and this is what happened with the example I'm thinking of, like, so I do work behind the scenes with a lot of very advanced healers doing healing on them. That's fine. And they come and put down their I'm a doctor or whatever hat and just do the work. But the issue with this particular person and that type is that I think she wanted training, but all she really wanted was a certificate that she could then use in a legal dispute. She had no intention to learn anything from me. And then oftentimes a lot of people, before you train them, experiencing the sessions themselves so they really understand and can learn the modality properly is something as well. But it's exactly what you said. She had completely healed herself and she was an enlightened Buddha and didn't need any personal healing. She doesn't have to have it from me. She could just do it in some way herself, but she was perfected in her mind, which was not true. And she had nothing to learn from me, which is also not true.
Yeah.
But which is fine, because then I don't have to do sessions with you, and don't come on my training course. That's okay. But also she was very triggered of just about the idea, and just that, or if you're the teacher, she wanted to get the training certificate, but she didn't want to learn anything from me, because that would put me as high to her, and that was unacceptable for her. I'm the greatest thing in the world vision of reality, which is very damaging. And so that, like, the humility that one has is
Yeah.
important, and like the willingness to learn, and the
Yeah.
knowing that I believe what you said as well, which is, the time that you've healed everything is the time of your final enlightenment, and that happens in the moment of your passing, unless you're Siddhartha Gautama, and that's one out of 10 billion. And so good luck if you think you're that person. That.
Yeah, no, I think that's why I always say, like, being humble is so important. And I think the more I know, the less I know. The more I know, that the less I'm actually question everything. Question everything. Okay. Oh, tell me more. Okay, explain to me what that. I think that just I love going down rabbit holes anyway. So that's my thing. And I'll go with you. I'll go there with you, wherever that rabbit hole you're going. But it's just the understanding that we're all students here of life.
Yeah.
We're all students of life. And I'm telling you, there's so many times that I'm thinking, I should just give up, right?
Yeah.
But then I know that even my part of the journey, the tools that I have brought me a lot, and has given me so much, again, so much relief. And when I'm saying relief, because I feel I'm very, very bodily. I feel everything in my body. Is that I when I have an insight, my body literally just kind of goes, thank you.
Yeah.
And why I'm very responsive to any type of healing modality and individuals. I'm very, very bodily, and very in hypnosis and everything like that. Because I'm just so willing. I really love that feeling of release in the body, and those insights. They just go, oh my God. And I think that anything that does that to your system, that gives you that
Yeah.
in this world that we're living in, go for it, explore it, let it show you where it can take you. Don't assume that you have all the answers, because nobody does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It is like the wisdom to know that you don't know, and the fool is the one who thinks they know everything. And
Yeah,
it's just sad to see those people, to be honest. And like, and for us, like, you can't work with them. Like, you can't teach the person whose their cup is full. You have to empty it a little bit, or you know.
yeah,
And so,
yeah,
like, there was actually, so that comes into when you work with people and you're doing coaching and things. So you also mentioned, if people are going have a soul crushing life experience. And
yeah,
part of it can be, so there's a really bodily metaphor to that. You take the soul, but you have a very physical kind of a way of expressing it. And I think, and that's also, you're talking about insights, as opposed to thinking you know the answer and dictating to yourself what that answer should be. So I think a lot of people, particularly in the professional development, they think the answer is having more money and more success and doing more things and being the biggest and the best. And so then they're like, well, I want you to coach me to be the biggest and the best. Then I'll be the richest. Then I'll be happy. And that's what my soul wants. And then you might
mhm,
say, well, you're dictating your idea of what happiness is, but you may have insights that have a little bit of a clash with that. So,
yeah.
so
I think that's the whole clue about everything in life. I think that the biggest question you can ask someone is, what do you want? And then just keep asking it. Okay, but what do you really want? And then, what do you really want? Most people, money, as we know, money, it's just a thing, and it's what we attach to it, and what we all the labels and values that we have given money, that they're not real. Of course, it's great to have it, and but it's safety, it's freedom, it's these values that we're going after. But you don't need money to give you freedom or safety. There are other ways to create freedom and safety within yourself and within your body. So you can already start creating that thing you want without having that thing we call money. So that's most of the time. I mean, I have many women in burnouts that come to me, of course, but because we've been so conditioned that we as women must have it all, must do it all, and then realizing like, yeah, but that most of them when they're in burnout, what do? They go home to heal. They go home and they go to their families and their children who love them, and then they realize, oh my God, I've had value all along. I've been loved all along. All this worth that I was trying to get out of society in this workplace, I've had it in my home. And that is a great healing space for, especially for women, to go back to every time, because they go, oh my God, I it's already here. And how do I create a life that supports all this love that's already here, and that's not giving me more, but just expanding my experience. And I think that's one of the most difficult things that we have in our societies right now, that we attach so much to money and career, that we think that's what's going to make us, feel seen, feel valued, feel safe. Finally, I have recognition. But if we go back to the core of our existence, of what we really, our values, we realize it's already there.
Yeah, like I think one real problem, and this is a real gaslighting in a way, which is you talk about going back to the core values, but a lot of
Mm.
people will think, well, that's regressive and conservative. I'm progressive and I stake my life identity to that. I'm particularly talking about America, but they are the majority of our listeners, and in the English-speaking world, they're the dominant force. And I think the culture wars, by the way, Americans, it's not like that in a lot of Australia or Europe. But I'd be curious what you think about that, because a progressive woman might be thinking, you're saying, I thought all of this work that we've done as feminists and powerful women, you don't need men. And now you're saying, don't forget about, being a mother, being a wife, being part of the family. What would you say to those progressives who might tension up about that
We as human beings have basic needs. Basic needs to belong, to be heard, to feel safe, to, it's, and when we're talking about just basic needs, many of our basic needs are being met within our core values, within our core connections and our core relationships. Yet, we have not been conditioned to think that that's enough. So, I am not saying by the way, I don't particularly consider myself a feminist, because I am very much about, I'm not saying we're not going out of I'm not leaving my home, because I've always worked. I've always done things outside of the home, and I always will. But I don't believe that defines me as a woman,
Mm,
about what it is my value of this world. It's always going to be about how I'm connecting to my family and to the people that matter to me. It's not about how much money I'm making. It's really, and actually, it's not about the impact I'm creating in the outside world. I'm sorry to say that's me, but that's me. But if I'm outside world and I'm very famous and I'm a freaking sucky mother and my kids are suffering, then I'm sorry, I don't feel very good.
yeah,
um, I want to be because connections matter to me. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good human. I want to be a good human. I don't want to be a good career woman. I want
yeah,
to be a good human. And human for me, values are love, kindness, all these things that matter to me, are what makes me, what I think defines us as human.
yeah,
And what I think that is what we, at the end of our in our deathbed, we want to hear from people. It's not like, oh my God, all these people show up on you and they're giving a eulogy. Oh my God, she created that $1 million company, and then your children show up at the eulogy and say, well, she sucked as a mother. She was never there, and I developed a severe this disorder because she was never there, and I never had a relationship because she was never there. you know what? That's what matters to me. I want my kids to, at the end of the day, say she was the best mom. She was completely imperfect. She was authentic. She cried. She raged, but she was there and she knew who she was and she allowed us to be who we were. That's what I want for my children and that's what for me matters.
Well, that's so interesting, like knowing who you are. And I think a lot of this, a lot of people think they know who they are because of the cultural conditioning they've been exposed to recently. And so this takes me back to what you said earlier on, which is I'm a woman of color, a
Yeah.
blonde, but also got African heritage in there somewhere. And
Yeah.
when you hear about Black Lives Matter in America, you're like, well, don't know what you're talking about. Your history is not my history. And so now
Yeah.
you're talking about being a woman. And I don't
Yeah.
know if I really connect with feminism. And my history is not your history. So American women of color and are very different to your situation, but they may be confused, or does anyone, woman, or everybody, I think, all it is showing is the cultural conditioning that we have and that
Yeah.
we see the world through those lenses. And
Well,
that becomes our sense of self. And
the thing is that when the problem is that America, and I'm going to be saying very, very, very bad things here now, is that they think they define everything. What their perspective of the world is is history, is the world.
yeah,
And it's not. So I grew up in in the Netherlands, and my sister, I remember having a conversation with her 7 years younger, and we both asked ourselves once, we're like, did we feel that we were being held back because we were mixed blood? Did we feel like we were being suppressed or oppressed or as women?
yeah,
We never did. And we just it or we were completely oblivious to it. I don't know, you know. But we never had that. We never felt also because of course we were coming in and we needed to learn the language. We didn't speak Dutch when we got there. And I was 13, so I really had to go into high school. I had to learn the language. I had all these things that I needed to overcome. And I never, not once did I feel that, oh my God, my heritage is holding me back. Oh, I don't have that in me. And I never have. And my sister has the same experience. She's like, no, what? You know? And I think also as women, we've also, and I think the problem with a country like the United States is that, and that's a big issue, of course, they don't have any type of health care that is not extremely expensive. They don't have
yeah,
free schooling that is of quality.
yeah,
So for me, in a country like the Netherlands and even here in Portugal, if you want to go to university, go to university. It's not a thing. It's not like, oh my God, the first generation to go. No. If you go, no, you go. It's there, right?
yeah,
We're not going into debt for it, and that makes me probably so. And again, people then you're entitled. No, that's my conditioning. That's my culture. That's my baseline. In your country, that would have made me entitled, but not in mine because that's not what I experienced. That was not. It was not a thing there. It
yeah.
was a thing there. And of course, you have issues around that, but I don't. But they want me to have them.
Yeah, well, that's a key thing here is like I'm not saying in any way that like anyone's right or wrong. And so like
Exactly.
so Black Lives Matter and women feminism cultures and progression in the United States very much needs to happen in that
It needs
country.
to happen, yes,
But
but it's
what
not reality.
yeah, it's not it comes back to that thing as well of people thinking they know all of the answers and then they can
Mm,
impose those on everybody else. And so certainly, or just the humility or just the clarity and understanding that there is, it is really, it applies in your country 100%. You live there, then it's 100% what you need to
exactly.
be. There's no issue with it. But it can be taking any other comment by anyone else in another culture and then canceling it or condemning it or whatever because it doesn't fit with you. But it doesn't have to fit.
It
And
doesn't
like
have to fit.
yeah,
We,
and
we we don't all have the same history.
yeah,
We don't all have the same realities, and all realities can coexist at the same time,
yeah,
and they're all valid. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I have to take your reality and make it mine when it hasn't been my experience.
Yeah.
You know, with the Black Lives Matters was this thing that everybody's like, you have to educate yourself around the history. And I said, okay, but are you going to educate yourself about my Black history then? And that wasn't the issue. So and then okay, but I'm willing. I'm willing. That's not saying that I'm not willing.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but is it going both ways? Are you
Yeah.
willing to also understand that not all Black history is the same? And that we all have our different things. I mean, I think the Dominican Republic is a very big hub of that you can see that Black history can be completely different. It's also not pretty at all.
Yeah.
But their experience of their Blackness is very different.
Yeah.
And their culture is different. So I never felt that that color was that issue in that way.
Yeah, I think for me, the ultimate purpose of this is to just as we as therapists, we can't be drawn into the drama and be triggered by our own clients. And I think ultimately, as we spiritually evolve, we want to be able to see our own life from a higher perspective and see it without, immense amount of anger or injustice. Because if we have that, it burns in us and it may then become counterproductive or it may keep us in the cycle where we've been condemned and judged by others. But if we just continue that, like your mother, where it just kept on doing what her grandmother did. And if we got judged and condemned by the patriarchy, and now women are condemning and judging men, you're just doing the same thing. And sooner or later, someone's got to break the cycle, and people have to see the overall system rather than my side, and then have a peace and a calm and a clarity, and then and go about your life doing the best that you can. I think one way that, and so there are, but people do need to fight the fight. So at a conventional level, people need to go out and do politics. But I'm not actually interested in politics because as a spiritual healer, I'll say you guys do all that stuff. That's fine. But my job as a therapist really is to have that higher spiritual perspective. And when we do that is by seeing past lives. So I've had past lives where I've been a woman, where I've been African, where I've been Indian, where I've been Mongolian, Tibetan, all of these things. So when I think about, oh, but you're a white male, I'm like, well, kind of. I've been like,
right
I've been all the genders and all the nationalities through my past life recall. So when people want to put you in a thing and they put themselves very neatly into a thing as well. And just so like, that's all fine. And that is true now. But past lives is the Past Life Awakening Institute. That's part of my perspective, and it's part of something that helps me not to get drawn into any, be triggered into any of those emotions, anger, worry, injustice, all that kind of stuff.
I think that's one of the biggest things you get from past life regression is that you get that bigger picture. You like it's all there. It's all these experiences. We've had them all. We're going through them all. And just having that wider perspective of kind of it's non-judgment too. I mean, of course, we all have our feelings, but it's that wide picture and understanding, look, why are we constantly defining ourselves in so many ways? We've been in all.
Right.
And also don't put me in one corner, like don't define me. I don't like being defined in one thing. I want it to be possible that I can explore them all.
Yeah.
And see what's me and then choose. But I don't want to be like right away put in a little box.
I actually don't mind being put in boxes. I just feel for the person doing it, like don't strain yourself putting me in a box. Like I don't care. Doesn't worry me, but like don't strain yourself while you're doing it. So have you recalled specific past lives? And have they related to this life? So we're seeing quite a bit of your, three cultures or three countries story. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of a lot of my life, as I said, I always felt like I've had so much, like, especially like condensed. It's like, I felt like I was in a big learning school. My first 20 years was, even though like I would say that my training started after I was 20 years old, my life training, my conditioning, my traumas, my biggest pains were those first 20 years. And I always felt that I was like, oh, I saw so many people being free to always kind of do what they wanted, and even and I always felt I was always so restrained, and I needed to, like, I had to fight for everything. I had to fight for every little piece that I had. I had to fight for it. And all my past lives, I think, and I've had many, very, very different ones. In Ireland, I was a mother of eight, married to my son. I had one that was in I think it was, I always felt it was around Italy. I don't think it's Italy, but it was in the Mediterranean. And I was a monk, and I lost my whole village while I was sitting quietly by a river. And I felt like I felt so much guilt that I didn't see it happening. And one of my, and I always had that big, like, I have a big load of responsibility. And if I, every time in all my life, in many of my lives, I would have that sense of, if I'm relaxed, something bad happens.
Okay. Wow.
And that has been like a big theme for me to work through. That it's okay to relax. That's okay. That, like, not everything is gonna, like, if I release the control, everything will be safe. And I had one past life here in Portugal, in which I was in the hills, just tending to the hills and trees and animals, and just thinking about it just goes. And I, like, now that I'm here, I totally see it and get it. But it's the themes that have pained me the most, that give me pain in my body, that express themselves through pains like fibromyalgia, have been around control, responsibility, the weight of, and they show up the most when I don't speak up.
Okay.
So for me, that's a big lesson. Every time I'm in resentment and I'm getting that soul crushing pain, like, oh my God, things are not, then my body just starts aching all over and I can barely move. And then as soon as I have that energy flowing, but by stating my boundaries, by speaking up what I need in a respectful, honorable way, right? It doesn't have to be in anger, but really about speaking my truth, then they dissipate. And I think that's one of the freedoms I have in this life that I didn't have in many lives, because of culture, because of the role of a woman, in back then, that the freedom we have now. Like, I'm not taking any of my freedom for granted as a woman these days. I'm really not saying that. But I believe that we as humans, we have, I think we're all here to connect.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes us human, and that's what makes us whole.
Yeah. And in order to connect with others, I think we have to connect deeply with ourself. And our
Yeah.
self is a myriad thing, and it's not just one identity or gender. So I feel I do feel a lot of empathy and connection to a lot of the issues, but progressive issues, because I identify with all of them in a past life. Hence, I feel on board and allied and all of that kind of stuff. But less, it's less of a life or death thing, because growing up in New Zealand, the culture it's just not America. It's not close to it, and so therefore that compelling need isn't there. But and what's interesting as well, you've got that past life meditating as a monk,
Yeah.
and you've got a past life in Portugal. And recently, I'm aware that you
Yeah.
have combined those things, and you've gone on a walking pilgrimage through the
Yeah.
north of Portugal, is it? Or Portugal?
Yes.
A
It
walking
was
tour.
from Portugal, from Porto to Santiago de Compostela. So it was from north of Portugal to Spain.
So yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. So to me, this is about a self-care and really walking the talk. And
Yeah.
pilgrimage is an uncomfortable thing. So it's a long walking tour. We did just mention before that you've got these your feet ache, and it's an uncomfortable thing to go out onto the road. but you mentioned all your other aches disappeared. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think the most fast. I think it was just fascinating because I'm thinking like, let's see what how my body's gonna do, right? Let's see what my body's gonna do through this. And I did train for it, but I never did really more than I think I only did one time 15 kilometers in one day. Other days I would just do 10, just to adjust my feet. And I was doing it in barefoot shoes. I wasn't doing it in any hiking shoes. I was going barefoot shoes. I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this like I'm gonna go all out.
Okay.
And I by day three, I had my ankles were still swollen, my feet were aching. One of the things that people don't realize in Portugal, and a lot of the pilgrims suffer or have to not can complete, is because of the cobblestones.
Right.
Oh, they just kill your feet and your ankles.
Yeah.
So I had like my ankles were still swollen. Did all my yoga every day, but by day four, you just get used to it. But all my pain in my body was gone. I had not one ache on my neck, like even just sitting here, you can already go like, oh, my neck is already a little bit tense because I've been sitting for too long. I had not one pain in my body except my feet. And then you just get used to the pain in your feet, and you stop questioning whether you're going to continue.
Yeah.
And that I thought, because I did it as a self thing. It was for me, right? I wanted to complete this. I wanted to have that sense of like, I can do this. I trained for it. I'm going to walk my talk. I'm going to do this thing that I've been wanting to do for years. And it's going to be not going to be easy, but I'm going to complete it. It was for me for completion. And
how many days was it, by the way?
I had 14 days and I did it in 11.
Wow.
So
how many kilometers or miles?
it was a total of 290.
Okay.
But I walked around, I'm not sure, it's around 240, 245.
It's a long way.
Because 290 was also like one boat ride. We had to cross over to port, so things like that, right?
Okay.
But it was an average, it was 11 days, 240 kilometers. So my longest day I did 28 kilometers and my shortest was 15, and it was just raining. We had torrential rains. We had like a hurricane rain coming in, and normally, so the question was the day before, oh, maybe I should just take a break today. Tomorrow it's going to be raining so much, I'll take a break. And then I got up the next day and like, no, you're not taking a break.
Yeah.
Like that sense of comfort that you know what you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
The next day, that sense of there's no doubt. All I have to do is get up and walk.
Well, I like part of that. You're surrendering yourself to nature, which is very humbling.
It was so beautiful, especially Portugal. That I did the coastal area. I did the Senda Litoral, which was all wrapped around the corners, boardwalks, and it was just mind-blowingly beautiful. And I would leave early so I didn't have to see other pilgrims. The days that I didn't like were the ones that I had to go through a city. I just really completely drained my energy in a very bad way. And in the days that I would different routes would merge, and then we would have too many pilgrims, and then you have to. That's the thing. You then have to adjust your pace to other people, and that wasn't that. Then you realize like, that's society. Oh, am I going too fast? What are they going to think? I'm going too slow. What are they going to think? Oh my God, do I have to be social now? Do I have to say something now? But I don't want to say anything now. I just want to continue my walk. I'm having such a good time. So those days that I was completely alone by the coast, walking and just being mind blown by nature were the best. And it was just so soothing that there's nothing else to do than to walk.
Right. So to me, there's humility, there's simplicity. What am I going to get? What am I going to do today? One foot in front of the other. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. You don't have to, your mind is not thinking, do I have to do laundry? Do I have to do the groceries? Do I have to go there? Do I have to? Today, what are you going to do? I'm just going to walk. And how far are you going to come? I don't know.
Yeah.
And how's you going to, we'll see. I just listen to my body.
Yeah.
And oh my God, it was fascinating. And every day, you would, it's when I ended in Santiago de Compostela. I set out for the last 15 kilometers very early because I wanted to get there early to get my Compostela early because otherwise will be big lines, etc. And again, I arrived I arrived there and it was early, so I had a nice empty square before the church, and I was like, okay, I got it. I got here, got my Compostela, went back, and then everybody started flocking, like tourists, people living there, and more pilgrims. And everybody was like in this erratic energy, kind of like, okay, we're finding where's alignment. Where is it? We got here. We did it. How am I supposed to be feeling? And now what? I don't feel, I didn't know, like it was so erratic. I had to leave within the hour. I did a little round for some souvenirs
Yeah.
and I was out of there. And 11 days of walking and my feet were so sore. By the time when I got out, I sat down and I had zero pain. It just disappeared. Even the pain in my feet just went away. I felt nothing.
Yeah. So it really is the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the journey. The destination, what's the next Camino or what's the next thing? And people were really thinking that they will feel something completely like, I don't know, they would see Maria coming down, bleeding her hands or something. I don't know, but it was just, they were like, and I'm like, oh my God, people, it's the journey. That's the thing. But it was so good. It was so good. And I'm already thinking, what's the next one?
Yeah. Well, look, I also travel an enormous amount. I'm on a
Yes.
trip now, and it's something that has really helped me as a healer. It helped me understand that I'm a New Zealand-born human life form conditioned by that. And then I'd go and live in places like India and get culture shock and
Yeah.
just be amazed, entranced, horrified in equal measures. This is all wrong. Why are they doing it like this? And realizing that, they're all right. I'm the only one wrong, thinking that it's wrong, and then going through that whole process. And so once you adjust, the funny thing is, and I then realized that the second half of the journey becomes when you go back. And so living for years in India and then going back to my country and getting reverse culture shock of being culture shocked by the place I'd at because I'd forgotten it. I'd adapted to where I was. And that's the kind of thing as well. So I'm interested in this journey that you've gone on. You learn those things. There's the journey of walking, but then how do you integrate that? Because it's not the big payoff you get at the end. It's the way that it's seeped into your being. And then that will influence, that lets you know who you are and you take that into your daily life going forward.
Yeah, that's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I got back and I think so as I said, like all the pain, I had no pain in my body. I was like so excited. I was writing new things for a program and I'm like, I'm pain free now. And then life starts again. And that's where you're like, oh, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But the lessons are there, and the lessons are very simple. I need to move more. I need to move. For me, movement just heals me so much. I need to move in nature, and
Yeah.
I need my routine. I really need a routine that just centers me every day. And I knew this, but I've never seen the effects so profoundly shown to me as during that pilgrimage.
Yeah.
So I realized now, again, I felt like I can't write this copy like this because I'm saying I'm like, but it's like I'm fake. But I did learn, and it's about implementing. Again, we lessons are nothing without the implementation. I'm very much about walking my talk, but I'm also very much about showing the progress within walking that talk, that it can be one step at a time, and that it's easy to be a monk in a monastery and be there completely zen all the time, or if I can be in pilgrimage all the time, yes, that's easy, but that's not my reality. So how can we implement these practices in a way that fits our daily life as uh, humans during this time, right? So anybody that says to me, you have to do this every day, I'm like, okay, that's good. I would really love to do that. You come walk, you come, be my life for a year, and then you tell me if that's realistic. If you think that's realistic. So I'm very much also about looking with my clients in that way at their lives. What works for you? We can all think we have the wisdom, but it has to work for their life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. Those personal life choices that you make coming back. And I think, creating situations where you're forced to be humble, by, physical exercise, moving your body. And also, another amazing thing about the pilgrimage walk is that there's a frugality involved. You don't need, people walking along, some of them are rich, some of them are not, doesn't matter that much. They're all just people putting one step in front of the other. But there's also relying on people each step of the way. So, you don't have, that little cocoon of wealth or things around you, and you're reliant on situations to sort of where's the next meal coming from? I don't know. I don't have my favorite restaurant. I don't have the concierge who knows me. I don't have the car on the reserved parking space. I'm just going to walk up in my shoes and I hope I get fed. And
I had a few of those. I had a few of those.
because in that cocoon, people can fall into the illusion that I'm totally self-reliant and I don't need other people and I can do everything myself, which is then seeps into some of these other things. But that's not, or like, even like the feminist movement, for example. You mentioned, like, at the end of the day, it does come back to the community, the family, these things are sort of basic stuff, and it's not but a lot of people do get a little bit over emphasizing that I can do it all and I don't need anyone else to help me. And I think ultimately we are interconnected, and that kind of mindset can be a little bit over isolating, and ultimately isn't true enough. That's, the truth will set us free, and if we tell ourselves things that aren't true, they'll come back and bite us sooner or later. And so I think having situations that really remind you of that, that you're relying on others, and that no one's so great that they can't learn something from somebody, or are completely developed. And so I think it's a nice lesson to take back as well. And you can learn it from nature, you can learn it from a therapist, you can learn it from a teacher, whatever it is, whatever works for you at that time. But just having that, and that's the antidote to I know everything, or I can insulate myself from the realities of life. When the Buddha did that for 28 years, he was insulated in his perfect little kingdom. I think a lot of people in the West are kind of a little bit like that. And that was, for me, like going to India and just seeing, like, actually, I was living in a tiny bubble of about 10% of the world lives like this, and 90% of the world lives like that. And this is the world that you're living on. Now, I didn't really you have no concept of what this planet is if you stay in those 10% bubbles, which is what most people do, and we're lucky enough to be listening to podcasts and all that stuff. And
I think that's why I think travel is so important. I think travel is so important to just broaden your perspective, to see, like, oh my God, there's so many realities coexisting at the same time. That's what I'm saying about all these things that are happening in the world. There's so many realities coexisting at the same time, and they're all real. They're all true for that person, because that's where they are in that bubble.
And the United States is a bubble of less than 5% of the world's population. 95% of the world doesn't know has no concept of what's happening.
I know.
And it's kind of like people say, I look into the night sky and I see so many stars and I feel humbled. You don't have to look that far. You're one little bubble, and the 95% of the rest of the world is an unknown universe in a lot of ways. but knowing that you don't know is that one important thing. And yeah, and whatever you can do to be more exposed to greater versions of reality is ultimately helpful.
Absolutely. I would say when people say like, "Oh, that's weird," I say, "No, it's different. That's
Yeah.
it's, oh, but that's weird. No, it's different. Something that you just never experienced. Different. Doesn't mean it's weird. It's just you don't you don't know where it's coming from." And I think that's one of the main things that for us as also as therapists, to be so aware of that bigger picture all the time. Be willing to not know.
Yeah.
Be willing to not know, to say, oh, like, look, this is not my experience. I've never experienced what you have experienced because it wasn't my reality. Tell me more because it's their truth.
Yeah.
But we, I know therapists will right away try to define that as not true, or no, look, this is what you experience. Who am I to say that didn't happen, that was not, that's your perception, and a perception is truth for that person. So it's so important to broaden our humility all the time on all aspects. On all aspects. The
Yeah.
more I know, the less I know.
Yeah. I live in Thailand a lot of the time. And you get people like Germans, for example, who come over and like, you must follow the rules, you must do that, you must drive like this. These Thai people are crazy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're upset. And you're getting a bit crazy about how they're crazy. You're the only crazy one here. They're doing it the right way.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and it's very easy to pile on to a German tourist. And let's just say a New Zealander might say the same thing. So I'll put myself in that boat. But ultimately, all of us, anytime we're looking at another group of people, it is still another culture, and we're saying it's wrong and our way is right. And it's really the same thing. So it's easy to say a
It's
tourist
so
is the odd one out, but really, anytime we're judging any other cultural context, and those cultural contexts exist within cities and families and whatever. And so that's one
exactly.
thing as a therapist we really learn. You can't judge people, and you have to understand their model of the world and work within it rather than rage against it. And that's so as therapists,
That's a very, I mean, I've seen so many therapists who are always, who do just, no, this is right and this is wrong. This is how relationships are. This is how relationships are not. This is how things are. This is like, yeah, but you're not
yeah,
giving that client the freedom to define what it is for them and what is right for them. We're not here to define other people's choices. We're here to help them go to where they need to be and what is right for them. And it's not my moral compass of whatever that might be. That's, who am I to judge, right?
yeah.
Uh, but I do see that a lot, and they then come to me later after they've been to them, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah,
So
I'm
what kind
sorry
of
that happened.
people are these? These are clients or?
Yeah, clients, yeah. It's very difficult when, I think one of the most damaging things that therapists can say to someone is you need a lot of therapy. And I've gone into very big rants about that. I think one of the I think we all want to be um, told we're going to be okay. And yes, there we have a lot to play with, but like when you say to somebody, you're so damaged, you need a lot of therapy. I don't believe in breaking somebody down first
Yeah.
to then build them back up. And I just like I go from right away from a place of love. It's like, okay, well, interesting. A lot has happened, well, we have a lot to play with, uh, but I would never say you need a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
And they see that like, almost like a moral obligation to tell them how broken they are. And I don't believe in people. I like to work from a place of, oh, we're going to be, we're going to do this together and we've got this, but not from a place of brokenness. And that really, and I get a lot of those people. that have gone through conventional therapy, and they're just, in therapy for 10 years because they're still broken, because that's what they're hearing all the time, that they're broken. And that really just my healer heart just leads.
Yeah. So what are some key takeaways you can give to therapists or people developing on the therapist path?
Again, yes, as we all know, we do need to do the inner work ourselves, but we don't have to be there. We can just be in the process, and be honest about that you're in the process. We only have to be a few steps ahead of our clients of matter speak. Do broaden your perspectives by exploring different modalities, because they give you all different ways of doing things, and don't stick to, don't try to be perfect. Nobody's looking for perfection. I think perfection is overrated. And the more the traditional therapist with the there's no bonding there. And I think, again, connection matters. I think relationships heal. That rapport, energy is important. And I think one of the most important parts of your work is that rapport, that connection you have. It's not about being entangled with your client. It's not about going completely into their emotions, but it's really about having that connection and reflecting back to them that that you're gonna, they're not broken.
Yeah. Well, for me, one of the key things is it's a lot easier to get into a rapport with other people if you're in deep rapport with yourself.
Exactly.
And that means taking the
That,
time.
that says everything. That sums it up nicely. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so yeah,
I think the most important thing. Yeah.
yeah, and so doing things like you've done, taking the time out to not see people for 14 days, to do a difficult, humbling experience of a pilgrimage, ultimately helps increase your self-rapport, and is really helpful. So you're really literally walking the talk. It's great to see.
Yeah. My best friend said to me, "You have to go live every day and with walk your talk." And I'm like,
Yeah.
nah.
Yeah.
I got that, but at the same time, I was, it was for me, it was also that personal aspect of it. I'm like, I don't want to have to, you
Well, yeah,
know,
I know
yeah.
what you mean. It's a marketing at what we do, and social media is another thing. But I'm very grateful that you're into the YouTube and podcasting world enough to come and give us your
Yeah.
report back
Yes.
from the Pilgrimage Trail. So thank you so much for doing that. Is anywhere where people can find you on your Instagram, Facebook?
Yes, well, I'm mostly on Facebook, the Vibrant Sensitive. It's just the Vibrant Sensitive. You look that up on Facebook, and I have a Facebook group that's where I'm mostly in. I do a lot there. I do a lot of lives, energy reports, healing moments, all these things. I do that in my group. That's my safe space. And so if anybody wants to join me there, welcome. I love it there. Feels
Great to
so
see you
nice.
again.
Feels so nice to see you, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, Karin. Okay, bye. Okay. Actually, I'll just do a little bit of a thing. So for people so you do use social media. So for people that want to find out and follow you, where can they do that? So
Yeah.
I'll just cut and splice it. Sorry. So that's the intro. Because I just went, oh, I forgot, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna move that back there. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So a bit of editing. Yeah. So actually anything. So now we're off camera a little bit, but like anything else you wanted to cover? Or
I also have, of course, I'm also on Instagram, but I'm not very active on Instagram, really. It just posts from Facebook.
okay.
I'm the most active on, I'm a Facebook mom, as my kids say.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, great to see you again. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mark.
Okay, we did it. Yay.
Hey, that was almost 2 hours in or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
No,
Excellent. Yeah,
yeah.
really nice one. A lot of really good points there.
Mm,
Interesting stuff.
life is fascinating, isn't it? I think well, I will keep saying it, I think to the day that I die, the more I know, the less I know. And I'm just, excited always to see what else is there,
Yeah.
Yeah. How long are you in Brazil for? How long?
For the first time in a year, I'm thinking about heading back. So I'm not, that's a good question. And the last day or two, I've been like putting my head back and I've been thinking I'll go back to Bangkok. And I don't know if I can live in this. I've been by a beach for most of the time for the last 3 years. And I don't know if I can be in the middle of the city. And that part of my life might be over. And I just realized that in
Yeah.
the last few days, looking back, I used to stay in this place, that place, going,
Mm.
Lumbini Park's really nice if you've been there. It's a big out, like Central Park, we're sort of next to that, but still, So yeah, so I'm just sort of having that integration after this big South America trip, which is now a year, and just see how it goes. So yeah, so
Well,
we'll
I'm
see. But
really
it's
curious to see because I think it's very. Again, Asia and South America are completely different energies. Um, Yet real life is still very much real life.
yeah, I've got a feeling I might be heading for my Portuguese farmhouse kind of a lifestyle. Now
Ooh.
that part of my life might be kicking in. I'm also going to be 50 and at the end of the year. So it's a
Ah.
genuine life phases are happening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But like yeah,
Fantastic. Fantastic.
yeah, all good.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah, lovely to see you. Yeah. So okay.
Lovely to see you, and
Yeah.
I'll keep tracking your processes.
Excellent. Yeah, that's it. See you on an Instagram or whatever it is as
Yes.
well. Yeah. Thanks so
Okay.
much. Okay.
Bye. Have a great
Bye.
day.
You
Bye.
too. Thanks for listening or watching. To find out more about my guest, see the links in the description for details. If you're interested in having personal sessions or certification training in hypnosis or hypnotherapy, or regression to this life, past lives, between lives, or spirit releasement therapy, then visit my website, thepastlifeawakeninginstitute.com, for details. Thanks so much for watching or listening, and see you next time.